Hey, how's it going? My name is Kenny Groom. I am the host of the Beyond Normal podcast. I've been podcasting for several years now. I'm looking forward to just discussing some of the things I've seen and learned in this space. I'm going to pass it to my fellow podcaster now so he can give you a quick intro on the amazing things he's doing with his work.
Yeah, what up, y'all? My name is Dumas. I'm also obviously a podcaster of a show called Highly Visible and a Little Misunderstood. I'm also been podcasting for a few years now. I'm really excited to dive into like all the learnings, resources, stuff we wish we knew, all this stuff along, this thing called podding. So really excited to be here and talk and chat and be real about the process because podcasting gets
You
hella
got to
hard.
keep it
Yeah,
real.
podcasting is really hella hard. Um,
For sure.
yeah.
So, as we both have been podcasting for several years now, the landscape is always changing. But, as we were talking and kind of brainstorming and just seeing how far we've come, we thought it would be, now the perfect time for us to, just share with the world, reflect a little bit around some of those things that we've learned throughout the process. For those that may be out there looking to be a podcaster or interested in getting into the space, why go ahead and bump your head if somebody's there to drop some knowledge to help you progress a little faster.
Yeah, and I would even add, like, for those who are already podcasting, right? Or maybe who's been podcasted, stop, like, it's also helpful to hear, you're not alone in kind of like that journey. You're not alone in like the process that we've all like any podcaster who's been podcasting for a while has like felt the things you felt, done the things you've done, all of the things. And so I think a big part of some of the conversations we had off mic, and that we'll likely have on mic, is that like, podcasting is hard. And like the name of the game is consistency, showing up, all of those things. So I can't wait to like talk more about it because I do really love podcasting. It's so fun to me. It's so fun to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
The podcasters that I know say the same thing that Jonathan has said. The ones that go more than a couple episodes, they really do enjoy it.
Mhm.
To your point, Jonathan, like every time I have a conversation off air with a podcaster, I learn something,
Yes.
right? I'm learning about a new tool, a new way to kind of break up my clips. I'm learning a new way to engage with my guests and ultimately the audience.
Hmm.
And so to your point, like the podcasters that are out there as well already doing it, I think they'll definitely get some value from some of the experiences that we can allude to a little bit.
Yep, and folks always say, especially Black folks, if you well, when you know, you know. If you know, you know, and I feel like other podcasters know, you know what I mean? So, one of the things that we didn't do before we dive into, some of these questions that we outlined, Kenny, is we didn't talk about, like, what our shows are about. So, what is your
Yeah.
show about, um, Kenny?
We're touching on the businesses, the podcast that we both run. My podcast, the Beyond Normal podcast, is about essentially highlighting Black founders,
Mm,
right? The journeys that they're on. We know that there's some incredible founders out there doing, just amazing things in underserved communities a lot of
mm,
times. And so when you start to think about the Black business owners that are here, in the States and really around the world, like we got to figure out how to make sure we're constantly shining a spotlight on their stories.
mhm.
And that was the main reason I started the Beyond Normal podcast. That's like the kind of the launching point, the launching thought. And I can actually just share real briefly, like just to let folks know, my very first guest was a local founder in the Charlotte area who had a delivery laundry service. When you think about something like laundry, it's something that hasn't changed, right, for decades, if not centuries. But all the technology that's out here, allows someone doing something someone may seem as simple as a laundry delivery service to bring their business into 2024. Technology serves all
Mhm.
businesses really across the world. And so, always looking for founders that are out there doing amazing things, being a business owner, because it's not a easy task to found and run your own company.
Yeah, no, that's cool. See, look at me almost going into podcast host mode because that's super fun and like that's a great example of just you know, the fulfilling of like the mission of your show of just like something so seemingly normal. Um, but you like hear their story and you're like, oh shoot, like this is not just whatever, like laundry. You know what I'm saying? It's something more. Like, why did you decide on laundry? What like technology is like influencing your business? How are you pushing it forward? Beyond this kind of like what's the word? I don't know what we see at face value. That's really cool. That's yeah.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go back and listen to that episode now. uh,
The very first one.
yeah. I love that. Um, oh, cool. I guess I'll go next. My show, Highly Visible and a Little Misunderstood, for initially started out as like a journal. I was just curious about the people in my life, curious about the people I grew up with. And I just wanted to ask them questions instead of just like thinking I know them, thinking I know, you know, what their thoughts are and patterns are. It's just because I spend a good amount of time with them, or in some cases, not as much time with them. And so uh, it has evolved into something more where it's, having more nuanced conversations about very complex things. As I was having these conversations with my friends, family, people that I met on the internet that became friends and family, uh, I started to realize like folks are hungry, very similar to what you discovered, Kenny, is like the stories and the why behind um, some of the bigger headlines, right? Behind some of the big things that are going on in society, the things that we navigate on an everyday basis. But sometimes feel uncomfortable around having those conversations or don't know how to have those conversations in a way that honors some yourself and the other person that you're talking to. And so I just decided to have more direct conversations about that, and be honest um, and take people seriously about what they're saying. And it's been really cool to see the show transform from this like diary of myself, this open diary, and breaking down concepts. And I'm a policy nerd and history nerd and stuff like that. So breaking down these concepts for folks, and it now being just like full on conversations with, beyond just my friends and family. Um, but people that I'm meeting online that are like these cool experts, have these dope stories, and are willing to chill in the gray, and navigate that space together and really question the why behind we do the things that we do. So it's been a really cool and fun journey over the past few years to do this.
Yeah. That's dope.
Yep.
Like you touched on, well, two things there. This is me wearing my
Yeah.
podcast or host hat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like Jonathan was a guest
Oh yeah. Yeah.
on the platform. And so I feel like as you were talking, it brought back some of the
Mm,
memories. Um, going through our conversation for the pod. But then like you talked about like, you know, people telling like their honest stories, authentic
mm,
stories. Like it doesn't really get more honest than being on a podcast, right?
yeah.
Like you could probably go into the situation with like this full script,
Mm,
and then for whatever reason, once we hit the record button, like all that goes out the
yeah.
window, right? And then you're trying to figure out like how can I, exhibit my true self in an audio format, right? For those true kind of diehard podcast fans. But now, podcasting is kind of blurred the lines between audio and
Yep.
video content,
Yep.
right? But you gotta have um honest dialogue for it to be something that resonates with people. And then the second thing is that for you, again, this is me wearing my
Yeah.
podcaster hat, but the podcast fits within your business,
Hmm.
right? And so you had your business and now you have your podcast and your podcast is helping your business grow.
Yeah.
That's another cool thing that, that's really an underrated way to think about podcasting that, I've seen some people tap into and really unlock, some business, some revenue behind having, content in the form of a podcast.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It's been a really interesting journey because I'm like, a large part of that was even, think about how am I going to make these like stories and thoughts or whatever integrate into the work that I'm doing. Um, and when I actually really like thought about it, it was so easy because folks like desire authenticity and talking about life and um struggles and like fears and work and just all the intersecting ways of being, um like folks want to hear and talk about it. And so like I've been able to
Mm,
use my pod as a resource because I just have like legit like cool ass people that are willing to have amazing conversations, and they just so happen to be, a professor. They just so happen to be an author. They just so happen to be X, Y, and Z.
mm,
But it what's cool, and I felt this even when I was on your show and some of the other episodes that I've listened to, is again, it's like we're seeing and talking and connecting with these people that like on the surface we get like their bio, founder,
mhm,
whatever business owner, do XYZ. But the way that we engage with them is actually like their humanity first, like their story first. And that's the part that I really, yeah, I love. I love, and it's taken me a little bit to get to like landing, or not landing there, but getting there to be able to do that as a host.
mhm,
But once I've landed that and gotten that a little bit better, it's just been the to your point, the conversation is just like rich. It's so full, and fun. Like people just, it's wild how like deep people are willing to go when you hit that
mhm.
record button. It's wild. It really is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know if we'll talk about that here on this
Yeah.
episode, but like what you just touched on at the end, like people go really deep
Mm.
and they'll just start talking and they don't know like they've been talking. The guest I'm speaking about, like they don't know they've been talking for like 5 minutes straight.
Yeah.
And then as host, you gotta kind of like find a way to like, all right,
Yeah.
stop giving me all the content at one time. Like,
Yeah.
this is my show.
Yeah.
Like, this is not your show. I understand you're here to share your story, so I kind of got to shut up, but I want to interject and kind of break this up a little.
Yep, yep.
But people are really surprised. Like once again, that record button gets hit, like they just start letting it all out there, and it's really
Mm,
authentic conversation versus like you were saying, like just seeing the title of founder somewhere. Like we go to people's LinkedIn's, and it's like it doesn't look like they've ever made a mistake.
mm.
Like how can you tell like they like where were the
Yeah.
lumps gained, right? Where did they fall and bump their head and pivot? Like it's really hard to decipher that a lot of
Mm,
times on social media because you just see like this finished product,
mhm,
right? But for podcasting in particular, it's one of the mediums I think where people don't just want to hear like the end of, they don't just want to hear the finished product,
mhm,
right? They want the story, they want to hear the journey, they want to hear all these things.
mhm,
Like the most listen to podcasts are like murder mysteries, right? Like that's no surprise. Like people really want to hear a story. They want to take the roller coaster ride with you. They don't want to necessarily, to your point, like you were saying, just see, oh, this person's a founder. Okay.
yeah,
Like, how did they get to that? Like, what was their journey? Why are they interested in entrepreneurship? Like, there's so much below the surface. You can peel that onion back, and that's like the movie, the movie magic. Like that's what makes everybody's life somewhat of a movie, a mini movie or a full
yep,
movie.
yep, that's good. We're getting into all kinds of, like, these, so it's so fun.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no,
Yeah,
no, no,
keep me
we're
on
good.
track.
No,
Podcast host.
we're good, we're good. I no, that's see, this is exactly why I wrote it out before we started, because then I knew we were gonna go all kinds of places. But, like,
Yeah.
this is not the only recording, though, too. We're gonna get into all of that in, like, separate posts, too. Um, but I mean, I think I wanna shift gears just a tiny bit, because we touched on some of the things we're gonna be sharing now, a little bit throughout, like, those little spills that we had. But I think a good question is, like, why do we get into potting? You know what I'm saying? Like, again, we said it earlier, but, like, if I were to ask you, Kenny, like, why did you decide to do a podcast? Like, why this medium, um, to share with the world?
For me, it was I came from a work environment where I was like interacting with people in person.
Mm,
So sales, like it was like sales and like data driven conversations and meeting with these really big businesses, like big retailers, all this other stuff, right? Really cool stuff, like traveling, all the whining and dining clients and all this stuff. And so the pandemic hit, and then it was like I'm just at home all day. Like I'm on 18 Zoom
mm,
calls. I'm not necessarily like interacting with business owners the way I was before,
mm,
in person, kind of breaking bread. And so I had to find just different ways to, outside of the corporate rigid structure, to have conversations with them where they can kind of like, sit back a little bit, take their time off, like not just be so uptight on this Zoom call.
yeah,
Like we were just zooming like Zoom
Yep.
crazy. I understood that at the time, and so I was like, well, let me see if I can start reaching back out to the business owners in my network. And I found out that a lot of them went out of business.
Uh,
Like no surprise due to the pandemic, right? Everything was on hold at least, right?
yeah.
From a business perspective. But the ones that were open within my network, I was like, well, how are you doing this? Like, the media outlets are saying it's the end of the world, like times are this is this new paramount shift. Like, how are you actually able to keep your business open? And then I started to dig a little bit and have conversations with them. And they were like, hey, like, this is in me.
Mm,
This is my journey. My journey has got prepared me for these types of situations. The pandemic being one of those situations where I'm just built for this. Like, I understand it. Like, I'm here for it. Like, I'm up to the
mm,
challenge. And that was something that like I admired. And I was like, okay, I gotta figure out like how to bottle this, like put it in a format so other people can listen because with all these businesses being, destroyed essentially, we need more businesses to be created.
mm,
And so we'll probably need more new entrepreneurs to fill that gap that's left behind by some of those folks that, they cash out or they're just not up to, they're not thinking that way anymore in the entrepreneur mindset. And so that was really like the launching pad for me.
mm.
I think I bought like a Zoom membership or something like that. And then the rest is history, right?
Yeah.
But that was kind of the launching pad for me and why I got into potting as a medium I could quickly buy a membership for and just start figuring out how to put these stories in the content I could share with others.
No, that's cool. That's really cool. I like that. I like that a lot. Um, hmm.
What about you?
Uh, I don't know. I've been a big fan of podcasts for a minute. Like, I don't remember like when I first started hearing podcasts. I think it was like 2014, I think. Because I had a job where I was traveling a lot, and I don't know who introduced me to a pod. It might have been an article I got or something, but I just started like just devouring these podcasts. NPR Politics was actually probably like my in like initiation. Again, I said I was like a policy nerd, political nerd, and so a lot of fascinating things were going on in 2014, 2015. So I was like just eating
Mhm.
so just always constantly. And then I love to like learn. And so I just found like podcasting was so easy to do on the go. So it's like, if I'm on my way, I'm on a business trip and I'm traveling and I gotta be in a car for like an hour and a half. All right, well, I'm listening to music or I'm listen to a podcast. And 9 times out of 10, I was listening to a podcast, just keeping me company. Um, and yeah, I just started like expanding it, and I just started realizing within myself like how much I was starting to learn about the world and like expanding my horizons. Because I think at that time I was like really, really lonely. Like as far as like being around other Black people and all this other stuff. Like I just I was at a very lonely time in my life, and like I just kept hearing. I was like just listening to all these Black voices doing dope stuff, and I'm like I want to be their friend and hearing their stories and actually learning about other people that I've never interacted with before. It just slowly but surely felt my mind like expanding and seeing how like huge the world is. Um, and uh and so similar to you, like, pandemic hit. I'm still listening to a lot of podcasts. And then I'm just like, like I had this idea of like, I could do this, like years before. And I was like, I could do this. I could do this. And I sat on it for 2, 3 years. Pandemic hit, boredom hit. I wasn't doing nothing. Um, and I was like, I dusted off that journal that I wrote all these ideas out. And I started recording. I did it. I tried it. And it was so interesting about how much I loved it. Um, and the other interesting part is like I had one episode, or I recorded 4 or 5 episodes that never went live. Like I recorded them and they sounded bad to me. So I just stopped. And again, 2, 3 years later, in the house, I was like, I'm going to really invest some time to like learn how to do this well. Um, and I recorded and then actually just press send. Like I just was like, I got to just get it out. Um, and the rest is similar. The rest is history. Like, I really just wanted to. I was curious um, about my friends and family, and I was like, "There's no way that I'm the only person that feels this way, that has these questions, that
Mhm.
want to know more about the people that are in our lives, because we really didn't like we don't know what we miss." Um, so yeah, that's really like the heart of it. Is like I was curious. I thought I could do it, and a fun fact: growing up, I always wanted to be a radio host, and it wasn't until like year
Mm.
3, like, I was doing it for 3 years, and last year was the first time I realized I'm actually living out a dream that I wanted, um, and it's
Yeah, that's
like when I was
dope.
a kid, and it's just so it's really wild that I get to do this, um, and I'm having so much fun doing it.
You still have the original 4 or 5 episodes.
They're probably somewhere. 'Cause that I don't know if I can bring myself to listen back to them. 'Em. They're probably somewhere. One of them, fun fact, was that the file got corrupted, so I spent an entire weekend trying to learn code to,
Oh my
uncorrupt it, and I
gosh.
was able to do it. It was funny, I was able to do it, but, yeah, those episodes are somewhere. They're probably fine. I was probably being,
Mm.
overcritical, but, yeah, yeah, man.
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to, is like, you said, like, you launched it when you were just like, "I'm gonna record it and hit
Mhm.
send." Like, just I'm not even gonna, like, worry about it. Like, I knew my first couple pods in terms of, like, audio and video quality, they were
Yeah.
trash. It was like the Zoom the Zoom mania, right? And so everybody was like, "Just get a Zoom and start recording
Mm.
stuff." And that I went that route, and it was just like, that's not the a preferred tool for podcasting, but it at least, like you said, it just gave me, all right, let me just keep pushing. Let me see if I really like
Yep.
this enough to put in the time. Like you talked about, you recorded 4 or 5 episodes and then you went away from it because you were unsure.
Mhm.
I didn't even give myself the time
Yeah.
because I'm pretty sure I would found a reason just not to do it.
Yep. Yep. No, that's
Then you came back to it. I'm not sure I would have had the, yeah, I think I would have been fine if I would have recorded 5 episodes and I wouldn't have put them out. I would have been done.
I honestly it was the pandemic, bro. Like, it really was a pandemic, honestly. Because if I was not bored, like, you know, at home, having to stay at home, um, I probably would have never came back to it. It probably just would have been one of those things that stuck on the shelf. Maybe I would have did it, but the job I had was cool. I actually was enjoying it. The reason why I even was like trying to do something different in potting was because I got like not because I just, let's do a lot of pot. I could do this. It was because like I didn't like my job at the time, like at that first go around. I needed some kind of creative outlet. Like it was just, oh my
Mhm.
gosh. And so, you know, yeah, it was a pandemic for sure. I honestly think it was a pandemic. I needed some 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 kind of hope.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
I can relate. I can relate to that. Like, that was part of mine. Like, I needed something else to, like, figure out how to bond with people the way
Yes.
I was accustomed to.
Mhm.
Because the Zoom, I'm sorry if I'm slandering Zoom for all the Zoom lovers out there.
Yeah.
It like destroyed me being on like back to back to back to back
Yes.
video conferencing calls with like this very generic
Mm.
agenda, reviewing PowerPoint presentations. Everything is like cookie cutter. We're just telling each other the same information over and over and over. I had to figure out a way. All right, I'm gonna be in Zoom all day. Let me figure out how to get some creative output out of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So it's similar to like what you were saying, right? Where work wasn't
My
doing it.
life force, went down as you started listing all that stuff out. That's like
Yes, like
I just started getting
it
drained.
was so crushing. It was really so
Oh,
crushing. I'm glad that somebody else felt the way felt that way about it. So, like, that brings me to, all right, you recorded some episodes, you went away from it. Now you're back with it. You're feeling good. Like you get a real good energy, a buzz from podcasting now. Like, what do you wish you knew? Like when you originally started this process, now that you have all this information.
yeah, well, I'll just start with one thing, and maybe we can go back and forth on, like, the things that we wish we knew. But the first one is like it goes back to like why I didn't post those episodes. Um, the first 4 or 5 episodes that I had is like I wish I knew that it didn't have to be perfect. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm,
I think I fooled myself a lot of the times, and maybe even folks that are new or even that are podcasting now, that like an episode has to be perfect, that like editing has to be perfect, sound quality has to be perfect, just everything has to be like a certain way in order for folks to like vibe with it. And it's so interesting that some of these podcasts that I listen to that are huge, like I love um higher learning uh, Van Lathan and Rachel Lindsay. Like, I love that podcast. I've been listening to that
mhm,
podcast sometimes, and there's like editing skips, there's stuff that's messed up, there's all kinds of stuff, and they got all kinds of money back in their show, and it's huge. And then I
mhm.
sit there and I'm like, I don't care about that. Like, they're hilarious. I learned something. It's a great show. It's one of my favorite shows. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, I wish I would have known that, 4 years ago when I started, that it didn't have to be perfect. It could just be, just
Yeah,
show up, and try your best, and it'll get better with time.
yeah, that's good, and, like, you mentioning that show, there's, like, the shows that we know are, like, the kind of the pinnacle of podcasting,
Mm,
right? Like, they're the ones making, the most money probably, they have the biggest audiences. Like, they kinda embrace, like, "Here's how I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it my way." It's
yes.
not necessarily going to be perfect.
Mhm.
You can probably buy a more expensive camera
Yep.
or microphone always. You can always spend money on, like, that type of stuff, but once your quality gets to a point that resonates with your audience, it's good. Like, as perfect as it needs to be,
Mhm.
you know, is the way that I like to think about it. But that's what you just spoke to. I've spoken to a lot of people that tried podcasting, and then, like you said, they're like, "Ah, it didn't look like what I'm seeing, the videos that are getting the millions of views
Mhm.
online." And it's like, you're probably not gonna get that right out the gate. It's not gonna be this perfect world. It's really like more of like a journal, like you mentioned at
Mhm.
first. Like, that's a really good analogy, I think, for what podcasting starts out as
Mm.
for most people, and then it morphs into something else once you get other hands in the pot and people wanting to throw money at
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, who's to say you actually even gonna like potting? You know what I'm saying? Why would you like, you're sitting here in the planning stages and doing all this stuff, like, what if and I spent a
you.
long time planning and did all this stuff. What if I didn't even like podcasting? I mean, obviously, I wouldn't have considered that a waste, but at the very end of the day, you just never know. Just do it. Try it first. Put an episode out first. See how you like the process before you start doing all that stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm. What would you say?
I
What
definitely
Yeah.
agree with that.
What would you say? What was something you wish you knew?
For me, I think so a lot of the founders that I initially had on, they wanted to just like focus on their business, and they didn't want to necessarily be seen. They were okay with being heard.
Mm.
So probably like the first 20 episodes or so, I didn't really care as much about video.
Mm.
And then eventually I just had to tell like some of my founder guests, like, we're gonna be a video podcast. Like, this is like for me, like, I'm used to engaging with people, breaking bread. I think that's part of it. I feel like that's part of what draws people in.
Yep.
I think the video just takes it over the top. The audio is good. You still have to have a captivating conversation, but there's something about video and just seeing people.
Mhm.
And so for me, I wish earlier on I would have focused on video and figured that piece out a little bit sooner.
Mm.
Cause then I think I'll be that much further in terms of just like creating content and being comfortable doing content in these different ways. From a comfort level, not necessarily an expert. I don't think I'm ever going to be a social media
Yeah,
expert,
yeah.
but just feeling comfortable at times, I still have to like come to grips with that in certain instances.
Yeah.
So just embracing video sooner
Mm.
for me would it takes.
Yeah, yeah. We were talking off camera, but now I'm going to video now, 4 years after the
Okay.
fact, and it is,
Good.
it's
You
tough,
have you
man.
have a
It's
lot of
not. Yeah, I know,
content.
it's tough, man. It's tough. but it's
Yeah, so like you said, it's just like as you're doing it, just process it, make it a part of your process, the video piece. It is gonna be a little bit more work. And then you talk about video quality and 720 versus 1080. I don't know what none of that
yeah.
means. I'll be honest. I just want content to go out that looks a certain way that, meets my taste,
Mhm.
and then all the rest will figure it out. I'll partner with different people that's their expertise.
Yep.
But I've gotten to that point now, right, where I'm comfortable with that and not necessarily like you were saying you were tinkering with code
Mm.
at one point. At first I was probably like tinkering a lot with well, if I do video, like how do I make it good and all this stuff? And it's just like, nah, just get used to sitting in front of this camera,
Yeah.
being comfortable, having a conversation with somebody, not looking all over the place, which I still have to work on.
Yeah.
But just being comfortable doing certain things on video, the sooner you get to it, probably the better you'll be.
Yep.
Just think of a year out, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years out. You'll reap the benefits of it for sure
That's true.
as a podcaster,
That's
in my
that's
opinion.
true. That's true. That's true. That's good. That's good. Let's
I'm
see.
trying to think what else I wish I knew.
I got one
Um,
that I wish I knew. It actually ties into both of the things that we've been talking about. But it's like, I wish I knew that I didn't have to like invest so much money uh into into stuff. Like just like what I was saying earlier. Like you don't even know if you're gonna like podcasting. You don't even know if
mhm,
you're gonna wanna be have a video platform, just a video platform or just an audio platform or a
mhm,
mixture of both. So, at the beginning, I was like looking up mics and trying to invest in this stuff and having to have all these headphones and what about what about when the guest sounds like and I got to get lights and all this other stuff and you know uh and I think when I in the beginning because I didn't have any money I was actually forced to just like make it work and just
mhm,
use like a pair of headphones um and stuff like that. Um, Not even using like any software because this was before I had like a Mac. Um, and I just recorded on my iPad, you know what I'm saying? And just doing that.
mhm,
And so it was what's interesting is that like I just wish I knew because it's not that I invested a lot of money in the beginning, but like I invested a unnecessary amount of time in that aspect rather than actually focusing on the conversation, having conversation, um, like, uh, focusing on the craft rather than just, like, all the extras that, other stuff because I was so busy um, paying attention to, like, all these other folks that have, again, so much, like, money and backing and support from organizations, companies, whatever, rather than just realizing I'm one person,
mhm.
and I'm literally doing this as a hobby just to have fun, like,
Yep.
and just have fun. Um, uh, yeah, because you'll get there. And to your point, you'll get there, um, uh, to your audio sounding better, to your video looking better and stuff like that. But, like, I think the first thing
Mhm.
needs to be is just, like, record, like, do the podcast first,
Yep.
focus on the craft first, and then move forward.
So I'm glad that you brought this up. You said that you feel like you spent too much time. I feel like I spent too much damn money
Yeah.
at first. Like I spent a lot of money on podcast
Yeah.
stuff. Like I just started like subscribing to stuff, and
Mm.
it was just like, oh yeah, I'm still on this form. Like let me subscribe to it for like a month or
Yep.
two, and then I cancel it. But I was just subscribing. It's podcasting ain't
It's
free.
not free. It's
It's
not
not
free.
free. So, but but I will say to your point, right, though, the activity of it, like the recording of it and just getting to the nitty-gritty of it, you can record that stuff on your iPad or whatever device you have, your phone. You can post it to YouTube yourself,
Yep.
right? You can post it to some of the podcasting sites, I think, yourself.
Mm.
I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Like,
But
individually.
most people go through like a Libsyn or like a Buzzsprout
Mm.
or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So you can do it a free way at first, but then when you start to brand it and kind of compare yourself to podcasting and the industry and all these things, then it could get expensive.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I did a post last year. I think it was on, well, it's X now. It's the site. I can't stand saying that.
Yeah.
But I think I broke down like how much I spent per month. And then at the end of it, I was pretty ashamed of
Mm,
myself how much I was spending per month.
mm, mm.
It was, I think on like little tools and subscriptions or stuff like that, it was like $50 a month, maybe 60. Um, but that stuff adds up every month, and then that doesn't include the one-time cost of, like, equipment and, like, maybe I work with a designer for a logo or something else.
Yep.
This hobby,
Yes.
as you labeled it,
Yep.
which I appreciate you labeling it such, has cost me thousands and thousands of
Yeah.
dollars at this point, 4 or 5 years in. I'm glad I made the investment, right? But I probably could have did certain things, like to your point, just get a camera in first, get whatever cheap mic you can, and then just like figure out the rest once you're 10, 20, maybe 30 episodes in.
Yeah. And we're gonna have an episode where we talk about resources and stuff like that more specifically,
Hmm.
because there's so many resources out there where you can avoid how much money we've spent. Yeah, I like it's so fun. Yeah, I know I said hobby, which it was in the beginning, but like now, and I don't know how you feel about this, Kenny, but like this is a part-time job. Like there's like when I'm in a
Hmm.
full swing of a season, with between editing, meeting with my intern for the show, uh, actually having recording the podcast, um, or editing the podcast, everything that goes there's so many aspects that go into the show, posting, promoting, all that stuff. If you want and then add on top of that, sponsors or support or whatever, there's all kinds of extra stuff that goes into it. And then you got subscribers. So like how do you connect with your subscribers and make them feel engaged? There's
Hmm.
all kinds of aspects of this is a part-time job at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like so I'm in a full swing of a show. It could easily, top 20 hours a week on top of like my job. You know what I'm saying? Like my 9 to 5. So um as much as I, called it a hobby before, like this thing is no longer a hobby. I still
Yeah,
enjoy
for
and love
sure.
doing it, but this is a legit part-time job. Um but like
That's
yeah,
facts.
but I didn't get to like part-time job status until, 3 years, 4 years. I didn't see it as a part-time job until, um really recently,
Hmm.
but it is. It really really is, especially now that it's an aspect of my business too. So, it's
Hmm.
wild. It really is wild, and it is not free. Anytime I pitch myself to my listeners, I'm like, "Y'all, like this podcast, the show is not free. Like it's not just time. It's like
Yeah,
the hosting site, I'm thankful to say that I've been able to pay my intern every single month since he's been on with me. But it's like this is all this
that's
yeah,
good.
this is like all this extra stuff, you know what I'm saying? Um that I just didn't realize that went into it. So that's a yeah, I just want to make sure that that's clear to folks.
Hmm. Yeah, I did I think we talked about this almost there. I did a couple runs of like merch. I was just like, I'm just gonna go for it.
Yeah.
Like the first 2, 3 seasons, I'm like buying merch
Yep.
and doing all this other stuff. I'm like putting pricing on the site, not knowing like, all right, I just wanted just to give the customer one number that they pay. I think it was like $40 for a hoodie or something like that. And then I go to the post office and they're like, yeah, you gotta paying the shit this, buddy. You know that, right? And I'm like, what is going on? This is hilarious.
Yeah.
I didn't know we had to put all of this stuff,
Yep.
and the price is different depending on where you ship it.
Yep.
So now I'm like, all right, I'm not really green on these hoodies and these hats the way I thought. So it's like, yeah, like this thing is not cheap when
Yes.
you start to make it like you said, when it goes from a hobby and you're just like, it's just a passion for you. You're not necessarily like too tied to the cost, but then when it becomes, you're spending a significant amount of hours each week.
Mhm.
You're meeting with creative people helping you with creative. You may be meeting with a sponsor. You're meeting with potential guests.
Mhm.
Like you can spend several hours, like you said, up to 20 hours in any given week. Then it's like, okay, I have to get some sort of a return for this
Yes.
because I'm taking time away from making money
Mhm.
support my family.
Yes.
So there's like, when it comes to that, then you start to like look at a little bit more, not penny pinching, but
Mm.
just like, all right, what am I spending my money
Yeah.
on? Am I really getting value from having this $10 subscription, $15 subscription every month?
Mm.
There's more times than not, you're probably not, and you can go without it. But then to your point, you may be sacrificing time, balancing that time and money piece. Do you want to spend the money to have it done in a shorter time, or are you okay rolling up your sleeves for certain stuff
Mm.
and keeping that money in your pocket and just doing some things yourself?
Yep. Yep. And like being honest and asking yourself, like, what can I do myself? And then, at a point where you're like further down, where do I need to like actually invest that money in? Because honestly,
Hmm.
I've gotten to a point now, and I'm thankful that I'm here at this point where I have extra money to be like, all right, I actually don't need to do that. I I don't have time
Hmm.
to learn this, then try and implement it, spend hours and hours and hours trying to do it, and then try and, sloppily put it out there. At this point, I'm like, there's somebody who literally can, do this in a couple hours. All I got to do is just spend, an hour to like break down what I need. And they'll be able to do it
Yep.
very fast. Um,
That's money well
and it's
spent.
money well
Like you
spent.
said,
Yeah.
hey, that's money well spent.
Yeah, so there's the pros and cons of it. Like you just start like to your point, what you were just saying was so good. It's like you just get wiser with your money. You start to get not not frugal, but you start to be like, you ask yourself like you just start asking yourself, do I actually need to do this? Do I actually need this? And what's the ROI?
Mhm.
It's a really good point. Um,
Yeah,
Amazing.
for sure.
All right. Well, we've been talking for a while. I know that we didn't want this to go too long. Is there any other things that you wish you knew? Maybe one more thing. I know I've dropped like 3 or 4, so I'll just let you bring some
Yeah,
up.
I'll do one final one. Just the power in connecting with other podcasters.
Such a good one.
I was on a
Yeah.
little bit of an island.
Yes.
I say no, this one for last. I hope you appreciate that, Jonathan.
Yeah. No,
No,
I absolutely
I'm
do.
just joking. Yeah, I'm joking. I'm joking. But yeah, just like connecting with podcasters earlier probably would have helped me spend less money. I would have learned some tips like early on that would have kind of, again, my trajectory would have just been that much faster. Like I would have been able to accelerate, higher faster.
Mhm.
And so that's something where I said at the beginning of the call, every time I talk to another podcaster, I learn something. Like I have something, a new tool or a new way to approach an interview that I can incorporate.
Mm.
And for the first probably 30 episodes, I didn't necessarily connect with podcasters as much as I could. And then after that point, I actually was like, hey, I want to have podcasters on my platform. They can be founders, but I also want to make sure I have some creatives as well that I can share with my audience. But it's in a selfish way, I'm actually learning from them
Mm.
and how they went about building their platform.
Yep.
So yeah, just connecting with other podcasters. There's tons of value in that. Tons.
That's such a good one. That's a really good one to leave off on or to be like that last like wish we knew. And very similarly, it took me a while to start connecting with other podcasters. So I learned something new every single time I talked to another podder.
Mhm.
And then also
Without fail.
and then like even a little peek behind the curtain, y'all, like we had like a whole like spreadsheet that we put together and we just like jotted down ideas that we want to talk about. We jotted down like resources, like other people that
Mhm.
we knew. And just to be able to like have somebody else to like, oh, like you use this tool too. Like, how are you using it? Or I never heard of it. It's just, man, like it just is easy. It just is easy. Yeah. It just makes things so much easier. So I love that. That's a good
Mhm.
point. Really, really good
Yeah,
point.
yeah, just as early as possible, just connecting. I know there's some communities out there. I think as we have other episodes, we'll make sure that we kind of highlight some of
Mm,
those because there's some amazing ones that folks can tap into
yep.
where you're just not on an island. Who wants to like, maybe some people want that, but the average person probably doesn't want to just start from scratch. Like we want to be able to go to a group of people or a resource site or something like that and figure out how to get the ball rolling. um, have the snowball kind of going downhill versus kind of pushing the rock uphill, right? Is the
Yep.
analogy I would give. Why make a mistake on your own when you can learn from somebody else, you
Yep.
know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's the perfect way to end it off. Yeah,
I
I
love
like
it.
that.
I love it. All right. Before we close out and leave, the final question, like closing question that I think, um, I don't know, will just round us out really, really well is like, Kenny, why do you still podcast? And then I'll answer it after you.
I would say I still podcast because I haven't talked to all the founders yet
Mm,
that look like me.
yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of founders creating amazing products, offering amazing solutions to their communities, to communities that look like me and you, or just underserved communities in general.
Mhm,
And so, as long as there's founders out there that look like me and you, right? Black founders, um, that are doing amazing things. I got to figure out how I can highlight them and spotlight what they're doing. Maybe it gets to a point, where I got the right dollar sign or right amount of commas in my bank account, right? I can give them investments and do some of those things as well. But this is my way of just investing in them. For now with the resources that I have.
mm,
And then as I build and I see them build, right, I think it'll be like a beneficial situation for me to make sure that I'm spotlighting their stories. I can grow as they grow.
mm.
And so, yeah, just long story short, I haven't talked to all the amazing Black founders out there. And so I'm looking for, this is a call to all the founders out
Yeah.
there, the Black founders. If you're out there, please hit me up. I'd love to have you on as a guest for the platform.
Yeah. No, that's dope. That's really cool. I love that. Go on the show. Amazing host. I had an amazing time when I was on there. Come through, come through, come through. Um, let's see. Why do I still podcast? I mean, besides the fact that I love it, I think that mm, there is a hunger for myself, but also for so many people that just like are exhausted and tired of like the um non-productive or unproductive like back and forth that happens at comment sections. I think that there are people out
Mm,
there that like, we were talking off camera. It's just like, folks just folks will lose their mind and say things they would never say to a person on the internet. Um and for me that's like draining. It's emotionally draining, it's psychologically draining, especially when it comes to like things that have to do with my blackness, black people, um uh or any other person that has a marginalized identity of like people just like coming just not really willing to like engage in an actual conversation. And so, I just like creating space to like ask questions, um, to be okay with doubt and being pushed to think more critically and think more deeply and purposely and intentionally about how we're navigating the world. Um, and I can have conversations like that all the day. That is like life giving to me. And so, very similarly to you, there are so many amazing and truly like beautiful stories out there that have not been shared, that haven't been explored, or if they have been explored, they haven't been explored uh, in a way that honors the person that's telling it, honors the storyteller. And so I want to do that. And that's what I'm going to do with some of the themes and topics that we cover on my show. So if you're interested in having a conversation like that, or want to explore conversations like that, or have a need and a desire for conversations like that, check out Highly Visible and A Little Misunderstood. I would love to interview you, have you part of the community, so on and so forth.
yeah, and I'll, I've listened to plenty of Jonathan's episodes, and I can really kind of state like for me being a black male, right? I looked at some of your content and it's like, all right, like Jonathan he's not necessarily handling these conversations in a way where, like it's not clickbait. Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
just like, all right, like, let's just see the comments and people arguing about like when it comes to things like what black masculinity
Hmm.
is, those types of topics. And you do a really good job of, hey, here's who I am. Like I can ask questions, but I'm not necessarily gonna ask questions to steer you to think like me,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
No, I appreciate
And
that,
I
brother.
appreciate dialogue like that versus we all know the content that's out there when it comes. to black masculinity in particular. I can speak to that. It is really
It's
toxic.
so toxic, bro.
And so, yes, it is like ridiculous. Maybe we can do an episode on that. I
Yes.
don't know. I don't know. I'm praying if we do an episode on it, we're gonna be labeled as that type of like energy and that type of pod. So I
Yeah.
don't think we should.
Yeah.
But we all know what I'm talking
Yep.
about. You go in the comment section and it's just like the same kind of stereotypical conversation. I appreciate you for having conversations that steer us away from that deliberately,
I appreciate you.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I appreciate you. That's so affirming. I appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, this has
for
been
sure.
fun.
This has been a great first talk for me, Jonathan. I'll pass it over to you, but I'm definitely looking forward to sharing more with the folks about my platform and your platform and just, giving them a peek under the hood of how we run.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is just an idea, and shout out I want to just shout you out, Kenny. Like, you came up with this, you hit me up, was like, I want to do something like this. Like, let's like just try. And I love experimenting. Like, I think that that's my word this year, is just try shit out, try stuff out. And so like, yeah, there's an agenda, but it's more of a conversation, and yeah, just a real dialogue about our experiences potting, and hopefully folks get some actually, I know folks, I'm not going to say hope. I know folks got some value out of this, and hopefully it's affirming. That's what I'll say. Hopefully it's affirming and impactful for them to keep going, to start, um, whatever. So yeah, that's all I got. I guess you could check out our shows Beyond Normal with Kenny, and then Highly Visible and A Little Misunderstood with myself. And I think both of our shows can be found everywhere, right? Yours can be found
Yep.
everywhere. Yeah. So check us
Yep.
out, y'all. Thanks so much for tapping in. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Peace.